Let's talk about the land of Goshen, where the family of Israel arrives after Joseph makes it available and Pharaoh says, here's your lease. And the Jewish people move there, the brothers of Joseph, Jacob, all the family of Israel finds itself in the Nile Delta in the land of Goshen. Joseph in chapter 45 of Genesis said that he wanted them to dwell there because that way you, your children, and your children's children will be near to me. That would keep everyone close and in one area as well. And the Jewish people could create a cultural enclave, a land of their own within a land not their own. What is that reality in the land of Goshen that we can identify by way of taking a look through the geological survey that we might make and bringing science to bear on our understanding of this land area? And how might our understandings in that way impact our readings of the biblical stories? So let's take a look historically, geologically, scientifically. So we call the area at the mouth of a river that's in a triangular shape of sorts with lots of different tributaries, waterways, branches of a river flowing into an ocean, a delta region. So that's what we've named it, a delta. Now, that region is generally triangular, and thusly it's given the name delta, most likely because of the Greek letter delta that is in the shape of a triangle. Now, that Greek letter delta in the shape of a triangle comes from the Greek alphabet. They wrote from left to right. But mind you, that equilateral triangle is an adaptation of the older Hebrew letter dalet, which rose up in a line, came down like you were making a triangle, but came across, kind of like, in a certain sense, a backwards P, but with more triangular lines, had a little extension here. But the Greeks kind of rotated it, put the point up top, and here you have this triangular shape. Why should there be a mix between a Greek letter and an ancient dalet? Well, the Jewish people mixed themselves into Egyptian society, and in the version of the historians, they arrived at that delta, that triangular shaped delta at the mouth of the Nile River, and that's where they settled, the Jewish people. Beyond the history of alphabets and why we call geological features the names of an aleph or a bet or a delta, a gamma or a delta, what we also understand is that a delta region, of course, has unique geological features. So now let's think in terms of these features. How did they come about? And also whether or not it has any impact on the whole Jewish story, the whole Jewish narrative that unfolds at the end of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus. Geologically, we know that rivers carry large amounts of sediment as they flow. And the steeper the flow of a river, the faster, the steeper the river, the faster the flow. Larger objects might be thrust into the ocean at the mouth of the river. And as the faster flow goes, or even regular good old flow of a river, those pebbles and that sand and the silt and material that is taken by the river and caused to flow all goes through the process of erosion as it's flowing, and larger particles are transformed as they're transported into smaller and smaller and smaller particles. And on the course of that journey, the particles are constantly worn down so that at the river's end, the water carries only clay. When clay is examined underneath an electron microscope, what we find is that it's actually made up of flakes that are 2/10,000ths of a centimeter in length. They measure less than that, up to 2/10,000ths of a centimeter. And they're 1/100 millionth of a centimeter in thickness. These small, tiny, minuscule, microscopic particles are known as colloids. Those colloids attract electrical charges. And those electrical charges sit on those teeny tiny surfaces. That phenomenon is known as static electricity. It's the same static electricity that sometimes gives us a shock after we've walked on a carpet and we touch something that can conduct electricity. There's just that release of electricity. Well, why is that important? Because as the static electrical charges on these clay particles are all negative, and they're there at the end of the river's run, what's going to happen is, whereas they were repelling each other before because all these microscopic particles that make up the clay were repelling each other because they shared the same charge, what happens is they get to the sea, and the seawater, which has positive ions of sodium and negative ions of chlorine dissolved in the water, the positive ions of sodium quickly attach to the negative clay flakes. And as soon as that happens, you get large clay particles that form because they all glom onto each other. They coagulate at that time. And that forms these large clay masses that quickly settle through the water, causing the river to flow in different directions. And as the river's water continues to cross the delta, now full of clay soil, it's forced to flow on its own flat-lying sediments. And the fresh water mixes with the seawater, and large deposits of clay, of course, are built up and up over time. And that creates a river that's choked off some of its channels, that splits and divides, that has land masses and even enough of a solid land mass of clay soil to create a unique characteristic delta topography of flat, fertile land with rich clay soil. So did that impact the Jewish people's arrival? And did they create a new lifestyle, a delta lifestyle? Did they learn about farming in that region and adapt uniquely to that spot? Well, when the Jews left Egypt, of course, they said, we missed the cucumbers and we missed the leeks, and they were potentially in a place where they were able to create harvests of wonderful vegetables and fruits that you could only find potentially in that area, that delta area. Maybe they were even so successful doing that that they had brought some of that to market. Maybe that's some of the reason that the Pharaoh, who did not know Joseph, got nervous, because the Jews were so successful within society, living on the delta, in that society of Egypt, where potentially other soils, even though the Nile was so life-affirming and giving, and flowed into the Egyptians' fields, that maybe the Jews had figured out a little bit how to make a successful go of life there, and increase not only their yield, but their population, and grew to really enjoy that spot on earth. The name Goshen fell into disuse over time, but came back into use when the Yom Kippur War happened. In 1973, Israeli military maps labeled that Nile Delta region again with the biblical name Goshen, to recognize that we were in a war of biblical proportions. And of course, the flow of life for both, please God, Israel and Egypt, should continue today. As we think about the roots we have, both in the land and even in Egypt as a people, we like to hope that there'll be a wonderful, life-affirming existence, no matter where our people are settled these days, on delta regions or in deserts across the Middle East. And please God, more knowledge about the geology and the science of the, the land of Israel, the land of Egypt, and beyond will help us understand more and more about how our ancestors and we can succeed in this world and potentially use it to our benefit to feed all those who are hungry and to create safe places for our culture to flourish. Shabbat Shalom.